Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Admiral, I want to thank you for your distinguished leadership of our military. And Ambassador Pickering, I want to thank you for your long and distinguished career in the best Bowdoin tradition of Joshua Chamberlain. But I also have responsibility here, and it's in that capacity of begin my questioning with the legal premise that, under the Inman principles, it is such an important idea that any variation from the security requirements under Inman require the direct, non-delegable commitment by the Secretary, him or herself, before it can be changed. Now, I realize we're not in an Inman type of circumstance. What we are, in fact, is in a different circumstance. But your findings, the board that said the key driver behind the weak security platform was the decision to treat the Benghazi as a temporary residential facility, even though it was a full-time office facility. Is it not correct that Undersecretary Kennedy made that decision?
Yes, he made the decision to continue for a year the facility that then existed at Benghazi. I don't know who made any decisions in the course of the transformation between April 2010 and December 2012 from a residence to an office and residence to another.
Well, let me ask, at the time of that decision that was made, was it in conformance with the what we call the Overseas Security Policy Board standards?
It was not.
In fact, it really was not. Your findings were that
the building did not meet those standards.
The comprehensive upgrade and risk mitigation plan did not exist. There wasn't a comprehensive security review conducted by Washington for Benghazi in 2012. That decision was a flawed process, a decision that did not take security considerations adequately into place. And Ambassador Pickering, did you interview Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, we interviewed Mr. Kennedy.
Did you interview Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, I did.
Did you keep a transcript of that interview?
We have a record of that interview.
You have a record of that interview. What is the record of that interview? Is that notes?
I'm sorry?
Is that notes? What is the record of that interview?
The record of that interview is notes.
Do you expect that that record will be shared with Congress?
That's obviously a question that we've discussed here many times. In my view, it is a long-standing issue between the executive branch and Congress into which I will not get.
Now, when you asked him questions about this, what were his responses when you asked him about the failure to have a risk mitigation plan or any comprehensive security views and all of those other things which you identified? When you asked him those questions, what were his responses?
The simple answer was he was making, according to his testimony, a decision to continue to occupy the real estate. The responsibilities for providing adequate security rested with the Bureau of Diplomatic Security.
Now, do you really believe that his responsibility is only to make a real estate decision, and he's placing this down on people below him?
I believe that he believed that's the decision he was making.
Well, you're the person who's asking him the questions if he believed. I just cited the fact that even the slightest, change on the Inman principles regards the direct turnover, the direct requirement of the Secretary of State herself.
The Undersecretary for Management and the Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security have different roles and missions. The Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security is responsible for providing the security.
May I ask, you said that he believed, but do you believe that he had a responsibility to look into those factors?
I believe that the Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security had that responsibility.
What was his responsibility then with respect to all of these kinds of shortcomings?
To provide the personnel and the security.
But the security was not there. It was not being provided.
And we found that individual at fault for not having done so, Mr. Meehan.
Would the gentleman yield for just a second?
Yes.
To make the record clear, the Undersecretary was in place the year before and the year before and the year before. So the decision to rent that facility in Benghazi was made under the Undersecretary, and the diplomatic security head held accountable reports to the Undersecretary. So why is this merry-go-round between you and the gentleman from Pennsylvania as to whether the Undersecretary had all the authority in front of him, but rather it wants to blame the diplomatic security head who reports to him?
Well, may I continue?
You please.
I want to continue my line of questioning here in one particular, because this is the testimony yesterday of Mr. Kennedy before the Foreign Relations Committee with respect. This is his words. Every day, we review the threat levels at all the posts of the world. We reach a point where we believe that the mitigation tools that are available to us cannot lower the threat level down, then we close the posts. He cites an example. We were in Damascus several years ago, and I concluded that given the situation in the ground of Damascus, we could not longer mitigate the risk sufficiently. I went to the Secretary of State, and she instantaneously gave me approval to suspend operations in Damascus and pull our people out. When you asked him what conversations he had with the Secretary of State with regard to the security at Benghazi, what did he tell you?
We did not ask him what conversations he had with respect to the Secretary of State.
Why not?
Regarding Benghazi.
Why not?
Because we knew and understood that the decision-making with respect to Benghazi took place at the level of the Assistant
But
Secretary.
he just said right here that he, in Syria, in a parallel situation, he consulted with the Secretary of State with regard to this. Not only did he make decisions, as you said, not just about real estate, but this is his testimony yesterday, that he was the one that was making decisions with regard to the points where we believe mitigation tools aren't effective. And he was assuming this responsibility. He was using this as his shield, that this was, I wanted to demonstrate the things that I have done effectively in the past, and therefore don't hold me accountable. So I am asking why he's not being held to the same degree of responsibility in a place in which you just identify yourself, that the security reviews were so deficient in so many ways.
Because, again, we believed, after looking at this, the initial decisions were made in the Bureau of Diplomatic
But
Security.
he is the one who made the initial decisions. It moves up. He's the one that's responsible.
Not if
he made the decision.
Not if there is not a dispute about providing the resources necessary to do that.
Ambassador Pickering, there were you identified 19 separate circumstances of aspects in which there were threats and other kinds of very serious things, and he says he monitors it every day. Now, what is the discrepancy? Why wouldn't that be in his attention? Why would this not be brought to the attention where he makes a decision, or as he says, he discusses with the Secretary of State the circumstances of Benghazi?
Because we believed that responsibility was lodged in the Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security. And it was very clear that's where the decisions were made and were not made.
But the decision to continue is, I struggle to understand why you're saying it's down there when he himself says he has these responsibilities and conducts these kinds of things every day.
I can only tell you that our full examination of this located the decision-making there.
Well, I thank you, Ambassador, for your,
decision-making.
but I certainly question the conclusion.
I thank the gentleman for his line of questioning.